When I refused to hand over my life insurance beneficiary status to my stepfather, he told the family I tried to commit fraud. My mother believed him. I lost every connection overnight. Then I found the email he sent to the insurance agent, trying to impersonate me. At the agency's annual review, I spoke as a guest witness. The investigator showed one screenshot. My mother stood up from her chair as the room. I'm 37 now. I live alone in Spokane, Washington, and I go entire weeks without talking to anyone except coworkers and the barista at the coffee place down the street. It wasn't always like this. Before all this happened, I had a big, messy, loving family, Sunday dinners, birthdays, too many texts in the group chat. I had a mom who called me every morning just to say hi. And then Doug came into the picture. He married my mom when I was 17. She was still grieving my dad when they met. I don't think she ever really got over him. Doug was slick, the kind of guy who always wore cologne and shook your hand too hard. I didn't like him from day one, but I told myself to be decent. He was good to her in the beginning, or at least he acted like it. Took her on little trips, bought her gifts, made her laugh again. I wanted her to be happy, so I shut up about my gut instinct. Fast forward 15 years. My mom's retired now. She stopped working around 60, and Doug took over all their finances. At first, it seemed like a relief to her, less stress, she said. But the more control he had, the smaller her world got. She'd call me less. She'd always say things like, Doug said we shouldn't spend right now, or Doug thinks it's not a good time to travel. She started checking with him before doing anything. I should have seen the red flags. I didn't. A few years ago, I took out a life insurance policy through work. I was healthy, single, no kids, but I figured it was just being responsible. I named my mom as the sole beneficiary. She was my person. Then about 2 years ago, I got a letter from the insurance company, routine stuff. Just a reminder to confirm my beneficiary or make changes if needed. I almost tossed it, but I figured I'd call and double-check. That call changed everything. The woman on the phone asked, So, you're calling to confirm the recent request to update your beneficiary? I said, What request?
She paused.
Said it had come through email about 2 weeks prior. Someone asking to switch my beneficiary from my mom to Douglas, last name, stepfather. Asked her to read me the email.
She did.
It was short, casual. Hi, just confirming I'd like to update my policy to name Doug, last name, as the new beneficiary.
Thanks.
The email address was almost identical to mine, off by one letter. But it wasn't me. And the signature at the bottom? It was my name, typed in cursive. There was even an attachment with a scan of my signature from some old document, probably something I left at my mom's house years ago. I was shaking. My mouth went dry. Asked them to freeze the change immediately and send me everything.
They did.
I called my mom the next day. I laid it all out. I was scared, confused, furious. I expected her to be shocked, to back me up. But what she said still echoes in my head like a punch to the chest. She said, Doug told me you were struggling financially, that you were trying to move things around to cover your debts. He said he was helping you get it sorted. I said, What debts? What the hell are you talking about? She got quiet. Then she said, He showed me emails. He said you were trying to cover your tracks, that you were afraid of getting caught. I couldn't believe it. You think I tried to commit insurance fraud? That I'd scam my own mother? She didn't yell. She didn't even sound mad. Just tired. I don't know what's going on with you anymore. I'm not getting in the middle of this. That was it. Within days, my phone stopped ringing. My uncle, who I'd been close with since I was a kid, blocked me. My cousin Jake messaged me, Whatever you're going through, I hope you get help. But don't drag the family into it. My aunt left me a voicemail saying I needed to apologize to Doug. I went to a lawyer. They said unless the insurance company pressed charges, there wasn't much they could do. The company started their own investigation, but they wouldn't share details with me. Just said they were looking into it. 9 months passed. I sank into a kind of depression I've never known before. I stopped going out. My work performance tanked. I went from feeling angry to feeling numb. Then I got a call. Her name was Carrie. She was from the insurance company's internal fraud division. She said they'd finished their investigation. They had proof the email came from an IP address tied directly to Doug's laptop. Not only that, he'd used his own name in the login metadata. Amateur-level mistake. Then she asked, "Would you be willing to speak at our annual fraud panel? You'd be a guest witness, just sharing your side. It's closed to the public, but includes industry investigators, analysts, and some involved parties." I agreed. Not because I wanted revenge, at least not yet. I just wanted the truth to be heard. The event was held in Portland. I wore a cheap blazer, tried to look composed. I didn't know Doug and my mom would be there until I walked into the room. They sat together. She looked tired, thinner than I remembered. He looked smug. Like this was some nuisance he had to sit through before getting back to his life. Carrie opened the session. She laid out the timeline, the emails, the fake address, the beneficiary request. Then she pulled up a slide on the projector. It was a screenshot of an email, the fake one, sitting in Doug's sent folder. The metadata showed the user as Doug. There was also a forwarded version of the same email sent from the fake address to his own main email, like he was checking in on it. Carrie said, "We obtained this with a search warrant, served digitally with the cooperation of the service provider." The room was quiet. My mother slowly stood up. She stared at the screen. Her hand was over her mouth. Then she looked down at Doug. He leaned toward her to say something, and she pulled away from him. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I'd already lost everything. But in that moment, I saw the beginning of something I wasn't sure I'd ever get, the truth coming out. After that panel in Portland, things didn't magically get better. There was no applause.
No tirfel reunión.
My mother didn't run up to hug me. She didn't even look in my direction when the meeting ended. She just walked out of the room alone. Doug followed her, his mouth moving a mile a minute like he was already rewriting what she saw, like he was trying to gaslight her before it could all sink in. I stayed seated. Carrie came over and thanked me for being there. She said the company would be forwarding the findings to their legal team for review and that there could be a civil suit for attempted fraud. She didn't promise anything. A week later, I got a formal letter. The company had terminated Doug's policy access permanently and blacklisted him from their system. No charges yet. Just a slap on the wrist as far as I was concerned. But they gave me a copy of the investigation summary. It was the first time I had proof. I saved every page. That same week, my job put me on probation. Apparently, Doug had contacted HR months earlier, pretending to be a concerned family member, and claimed I was being investigated for financial misconduct. My manager said it triggered an internal audit that I didn't even know about. I was furious. I brought them the fraud packet from the insurance company. Once they realized what was going on, they dropped the review and apologized, but the damage was done. People in the office had already heard the rumors. One coworker I used to eat lunch with every day just stopped talking to me. I wasn't that guy anymore. I was that guy with family drama. Meanwhile, my mother still hadn't called. Not a word. So I drove down to Medford. She answered the door. She looked like she hadn't been sleeping. Her hair was pinned up like always, but she didn't meet my eyes. I said, "You saw the email. You know it was him." She said, "He told me you hacked his computer." I laughed. Out loud. "Are you serious?" He said you planted it. That you knew how to fake a metadata trail. Mom, that's not how any of this works. You really think I'm some kind of master hacker now? She didn't answer. Just stood there with her arms crossed. I said, "Do you even care that he tried to steal from me? That he turned the whole family against me?" She whispered, "I don't know what to believe." And that was worse than anger. It was worse than yelling or crying. It was like looking at a stranger. I turned around and left. A few days later, I found out my cousin Jake had bought a used truck from Doug. That's when it hit me. Doug wasn't just sitting back. He was doubling down, making calls, spinning stories, painting me as unstable, bitter, out for revenge. And it was working. The tipping point came 3 weeks later. I got a knock on my apartment door. It was a man in a suit, holding a subpoena. Doug was filing a defamation suit against me, claiming I'd slandered him in a public setting, the fraud panel, and that I'd cost him business opportunities. I couldn't believe it. I had to pay for my own attorney. The legal fees were crushing. I pulled money from savings. I stopped going out completely. Every spare hour went into gathering documents, screenshots, witness statements from the insurance company. And while I was drowning, Doug was still throwing dinner parties, posting vacation photos with my mother like nothing happened, like he hadn't tried to erase me. But what he didn't know, what no one in the family knew, was that I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was building something, a case, a plan. Because I'd found more than just that one email. Carrie had tipped me off before she left the company. She said, "Check the state licensing board." Doug used to sell insurance too.
So I did.
And what I found made everything else look small. Doug wasn't just a manipulative stepfather. He was already under quiet review for falsifying paperwork on multiple client policies. And now I had enough documentation to connect the dots. This wasn't personal greed.
This was a pattern.
And now I had the motivation, the legal trail, and the receipts to finally bring the whole damn thing down. The investigator had been right. Doug used to be licensed to sell insurance in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. His license had expired years ago, but his name still showed up in a few complaint records. Nothing serious on paper, just unresolved flags. But I wasn't looking at paper anymore. I was deep into forums, old PDFs, business reviews, archived LinkedIn posts. I even pulled court records from 2 small claims lawsuits back in 2014 and 2016, both for unfulfilled contract terms related to financial consulting. Then I found it. A man named Russell had filed a complaint in 2015. Said Doug misrepresented himself as a licensed advisor and convinced him to move money into a private insurance trust. The money disappeared. The case was dismissed due to insufficient documentation. But I still found Russell. He was still living in Beaverton. I drove down on a weekend, knocked on his door, and told him who I was. The guy looked tired. But when I mentioned Doug's full name, he stepped outside, closed the door behind him, and said, "You too." Turns out Russell wasn't the only one. Doug had a pattern: older people, retirees, people on the edge of financial stress. He'd offer to optimize their policies, do some fast talking, take over their paperwork, and then ghost them or shift blame when things went south. It was legal whack-a-mole. Nothing ever stuck. I asked Russell if he'd talk to a lawyer with me. He said yes. He even had a folder of paperwork he kept just in case. Back in Spokane, my attorney flipped when I showed him. Now we weren't just fighting a defamation claim. We were preparing a countersuit, civil fraud, and malicious prosecution. But we needed one more thing: a direct tie between Doug's past actions and his attempt to steal my beneficiary status. I didn't think I'd find it. Then my mother called. It had been months. I saw her name flash on the screen and almost didn't answer. She said, "I need to give you something." I met her at a park halfway between Medford and Eugene. She looked older, smaller. She handed me a yellow manila envelope, the kind we used to keep bills in when I was a kid. Inside were printed emails, copies of texts, some between her and Doug, some forwarded from his phone. One email stood out. It was Doug messaging someone named Darren, talking about getting the name changed over before renewal, and "She's still listed as the primary, but if I can get the doc signed, we'll be set." She's still listed. It wasn't about me anymore. Doug had tried to do the same thing to my mom's policy, the one I helped her set up years ago after she retired. I was the listed beneficiary on hers. And now Doug had been trying to cut me out of it too. She looked at me, eyes glassy. I didn't know until last week. He kept saying it was just legal stuff. Cleaning up files. I went through his desk after Portland. Found a folder with my policy, with your name scratched out in pen.
I didn't say anything.
She said, "I believed him, because I wanted to. Because it was easier." And there it was. Not just betrayal, but acknowledgement. I handed the envelope to my attorney the next day. What we had now was a timeline, a second victim, a motive, and a paper trail. Doug's fraud wasn't just personal, it was systemic. The case was building, but we still needed a place to break it wide open. Then the perfect opportunity dropped into our lap. The local news station in Medford was running a feature on financial fraud targeting seniors. They were looking for real cases. My lawyer said, "Don't talk to them. Not yet." But I had another idea. Carrie, the former insurance investigator, had started working for a national fraud prevention nonprofit. I reached out to her. She remembered everything. She agreed to introduce us to the station's producer off-record. A month later, I sat across from a camera crew, fully anonymized, with my voice altered. They aired it 3 weeks later. The hidden threat: financial predators in retirement homes. They didn't name Doug, but they showed the emails, with his name blurred out. They showed the IP address logs. They aired part of a voicemail he'd left me, threatening to end this mess before it gets messy for you. People in Medford knew exactly who it was. Doug started losing clients. Someone leaked the video from the fraud panel. His name was all over a Facebook group for local realtors and insurance agents. Then a formal review got launched by the State Financial Commission. And through all of this,
He still hadn't been charged.
he still hadn't apologized. And he still hadn't lost everything. But he would. Because I wasn't finished yet. Doug didn't go down all at once. That would have been too easy. Instead, he fell in stages. Small, humiliating cracks that got wider by the week. First, it was the loss of trust. Clients started canceling meetings. One by one, people pulled out of deals. Then came the quiet distancing from the very people who once believed in him: neighbors, poker buddies, the same family members who had blocked me months earlier. The defamation lawsuit he filed against me? It backfired. My countersuit forced discovery. His financial records were subpoenaed. That's when it got ugly. My lawyer uncovered 3 more attempts, on other policies, where Doug used near-identical tactics. He was targeting anyone he thought was too old or too disconnected to notice. Some of them hadn't even realized he was collecting commissions on policies they didn't know had been rewritten. When the fraud unit at the state commission saw our findings, they reopened the inactive complaints. This time with my case front and center. I remember sitting in the back of the administrative hearing in Salem, listening to Doug fumble through his explanation. "Miscommunication," he said. "Tech error." He blamed assistants that didn't exist. He tried to turn it on me again, said I had a personal grudge and was trying to ruin him. But then my mother was called to testify. She sat down, looked right at the panel, and said, "He told me my son was mentally unstable. He told me he was protecting me.
He lied."
And I believed him. Doug didn't even turn to look at her. His license, what was left of it, was permanently revoked. He was fined. Multiple civil judgments followed, and I wasn't the only one suing him now. As for me, I didn't get rich from any of it. My settlement barely covered what I spent on legal fees, travel, and time lost. But that wasn't the point. The point was seeing Doug serve 2 nights in jail for contempt after he missed a compliance deadline. The point was watching him walk out of that courthouse pale, broke and quiet, wearing a suit that didn't fit anymore. The point was when I walked into my mother's kitchen for the first time in almost 2 years, and she didn't say anything, just stood there crying, then pulled me into a hug like she couldn't let go. "We're not okay. Not like before. But we talk now. We're rebuilding, slow, clumsy steps towards something honest." And the rest of the family? Some apologized. Most didn't. A few reached out when Doug's story hit the local news, pretending like they always had doubts. I don't respond to them. They weren't there when it mattered. Doug lives alone now. Word is he tried moving to Idaho to start over, but the financial community is small. He's been blackballed from anything involving money or trust. And in a town like Medford, that means he's done. I got my life back. Not all of it. Not the time. Not the peace. But I got the truth. I got justice. And I got to watch the man who tried to erase me become invisible himself. That was enough.